Hi, I'm Simon. Thanks for tuning into The Ordinary Filmmaker. If you're new here, click subscribe so you'll receive notification of new videos like this one, so you don't miss any news, rumors, or tutorials. Oh, and by the way, don't forget, I'm giving away a brand new Canon EOS R5. You can find more details about that camera giveaway by watching this video here and looking at the terms and conditions at the bottom of that video. All right, so here we are. We're in another Q&A session. I think I've been doing this for about 3 months now. Yeah, about 3 months, because I've had the EOS R5 for about 2 months and I shot with the 70D a good month before that. Can't believe I've been doing it that long. Time really flies when you're having fun, doesn't it? All right, well, I'm just going to get right into the question and answers, and then I'll do a little bit of behind the scenes once we're done. It's currently in the upper 70s, around 76, 77, 78, which is in, I guess, mid to high 20s. So I'm wondering if that overheat warning will kick in. But I've got my camera connect down here so I can see the recording, I can see what's going on, and that should help out a lot with that. All right, let's get to our first rumor. How many microphones did you buy before you settled on the Sennheiser 400? You're not going to believe this, but that was the first one I got. Now, I did do a bit of research, and then I finally went to my local camera store. And probably fortunately for me, they were kind of limited. They had the Sennheiser and they had the Rode. And so I bought it, and it was one of those things. It was like me buying the 70D. I didn't know it was the best stills hybrid camera at the time to produce video with its new dual pixel autofocus. I just luckily purchased it, and it was the same thing with the Sennheiser. I just kind of stumbled into it. But since then, getting other microphones has been a bit of hit and miss. Now the Tascam, the reason why I ended up with this one is Gregg. On his channel, he was talking about the microphones that he used, and he says, yes, the Tascam's a really good mic, and it's actually one of the best sellers, so I lucked onto that one. But I am going to be doing a review on some wireless microphones soon. I'm just playing around with them. It's taking a little bit longer to get that one to market, but you know, part of it's doing research. It's listening to how other people use it. So for the scenarios you're looking at using a microphone, find out what those people are using, and usually it'll save you an awful lot of time, effort, and money if you listen to people that have already made the mistakes and end up with good microphones. Brian asks, hey Simon, I just saw Camera Conspiracy's review on the R5 and R6. I was kind of disheartened from what I saw. What are your thoughts? Well, Brian, you've been watching my videos for a long time, and I'm quite honest with you guys. Now, my scenarios are a little different from Casey. Casey does an awful lot of vlogging, and pretty well, he's either vlogging or he's in his home office. Now, in my home office, it's not so much of a home office, it's a studio. I've got complete control over lighting. I don't have any external lighting coming in as Casey does. So I can basically create a set of presets and not even white balance every time, because once I apply those presets, it's going to take that into consideration. Shooting outside is a lot more difficult. And I can concur with Casey that when it comes to metering, the R5 sometimes plays favorites with the background. And here I am in a situation here. You can see that we've got some bright lights over here. That's actually the sunlight, our star up there. And I don't have any other lighting on me right now. So sometimes I do put a light right here to help brighten me up a little bit, but this time I haven't done that, to give you an idea of how it performs. Now, what I have noticed is, and this happened a lot with firmware 1.0, I noticed that even though there might only be a small amount of sunlight in the background, maybe 15% or more, what the camera would do, it was expose for the background, not the foreground. Now, I did call out to Canon Canada, and I was talking to one of their guys, and he said, well, it really shouldn't happen. Now, what's happening when you're focusing in manual mode, the camera is metering based on the type of focus you pick. So if you pick eye autofocus, then it should expose and meter, it should meter for what it's got focused on. And yeah, that didn't happen to me at first. Now, I've been shooting with 1.1.0 for quite some time, and I haven't really tried to set the scene up to reproduce some of the problems he had. I have no interest in vlogging with the R5, except for once in a while to do a test. It's just not my kind of thing. And if I was going to vlog, I probably wouldn't choose the R5. I'd probably choose a lighter camera, for example, the Rebel, or an APS-C camera with a 18 millimeter, 20 millimeter, or something like that. I think 24 millimeters is a bit too Well, it's not as wide as you would like on an APS-C camera. So I think it does depend on the settings, but what I've learned to do to work around that for now is I make sure the camera's in the shade and that I'm in the shade, and there might be some light coming through this tree a little bit, but not enough to really trip the meter. And I found that helped a lot. But what I also found out is when I shot with a 70D, I would set the shutter to 1/30th or 1/60th of a second. I would set the, what was the f-stop? I can't remember. I'd set it to something and I'd set the ISO to 100 and it was fine. But the R5, if I did that, the exposure would just blow everything away pretty quickly because I shoot in the morning a lot of times. And so 5 or 10 minutes out and basically it's like a snow screen. So what I've done to compensate for that, and Canon will say the same thing, if you're going to fix the shutter, and you should with video, 1/60th of a second, although 130 isn't going to really be that bad for a talking head. Then I set the f-stop in this case. I hope it's set to 1.8. Yes. So I've set it to 1.8 this time to better separate myself from the background. Otherwise it defaults to 1.2. Not a problem, it's just more for stylistic concerns. And the ISO I let float, and that way I don't have any problems with the exposure, because it's a triangle and one of those three things has to give. So what can happen? Well, as the lighting changes up here, you're going to see the lighting in the frame change. It's the way it happens. You can't stop that. If you want to stop that, shoot inside. Now, I would like to get some screens that I can put them here so when the sunlight does come through, it's not as harsh, but I find that if I set those settings on the R5, and I've got the camera in the shade and me in the shade, I generally get the best results. But I did have some metering problems. So a long answer to your short question. But I'm playing around with it a bit more. I don't want to do a video on it with the R5 until I've truly tested it and until I hear back from Canon. But one thing Canon was also suggesting is when you set the autofocus, instead of setting it to the face detection eye autofocus, is go ahead and use one of the zones. And so for example, I'd use one of the upper wide zones and narrow it down to where I am, and it should be better. But I was playing around with it on the deck earlier, and yeah, it loves the background. So hopefully in a firmware they kind of tone that down a little bit. And a second question from Brian, are you reconsidering the R5 giveaway? I love your channel, but at your current rate of growth, 50,000 subscribers or followers seems a long way away. Any thought on a lower target like 15K? At some point, you have to actually give away the camera or you'll lose credibility. Thanks. Well, Brian, the reason I picked 100,000 is just economics. Camera's expensive and I just don't get enough income at this stage to be able to give it away. So it's still going to be $100,000, and I can't see myself losing credibility because I haven't changed the yardstick. I haven't moved things at all. I haven't changed the terms. So I've been very clear with that from the beginning, and if you watch the video that I had at the beginning that talks about it, and it's in the description down below, I've got all the terms and conditions clearly laid out. However, forget that I might lose credibility. It stops becoming nearly as much fun. So I've also hit something in this frame to create extra opportunities for you guys to increase your odds of winning. But what I've decided to do as well is every 10,000 subscribers, I'm going to offer up another price. So when we get to 20,000 subscribers, which is just about 6,000 subscribers away, I'm going to be giving away the Synco Lab microphone and shotgun mic. That's the S6E and the M3. And then when I get to 30,000, I'll identify a different prize, and they're going to get better and better as we get up to the R5. So I'm not worried about losing credibility. I think I'm pretty transparent with everybody. And that being said, sure, some people aren't going to like it and they're going to click off, and that's fine. I've had some people say to me, yeah, sure, you're giving it away. Well, yeah, sure, I am. But the whole math behind that is once I get up to 100,000 subscribers, assuming it takes 5 to 8 months, that point I predict getting around $3,000 a month. So it would only take about a month and a half to cover the costs of it. So that's the reason for doing it that way. But thanks for your concerns. Wes asks, I want to start a channel. You seem to be figuring things out. Any advice? Oh boy, do I have an awful lot of advice for you. Wes, one of the reasons I've been so successful starting out is my day job. I'm an enterprise architect, and a big part of that role is ensuring alignment of all the activities and projects that a company works on with their vision. So at the very beginning, I start out with my own vision, and this is it right here. Deliver informative news, reviews, and tutorials on camera gear, filming techniques, and content creation. So once I had that vision set up, then I thought, well, okay, I need to get some objectives, and keep in mind, this is way back in October, November. And these are some of the objectives I came up with back then. Improve content presentations, improve audio, channel set, lighting, content delivery, channel subscriptions, and of course increase channel subscriptions and revenue. That might sound really simple, and it should, because you've now got a clear vision of what your goals are, your objectives, and what your vision for your channel is. And that really, really helps, because a channel that is absolutely focused on a vision, when somebody gets pulled in by looking at one video, then the next thing they do is, oh, I like that, let's see what else they have. Take a look. And they might watch you for a little while before subscribing. People generally don't watch one video and subscribe right away unless you've blown them away. So it's very important to not seem like your channel's scattered all over the place. And that's where the vision and goals and objectives come in. And you can see from those objectives, go back and look at my first videos. The audio was terrible. My presentation skills were terrible. My set design wasn't very good, and my lighting wasn't very good, and I think I've done a much better job of improving those skills. Oh, I better make sure, am I recording audio? Yes, I am. Sorry guys, I had a scare. I had a scare that I wasn't recording audio. But follow those goals and objectives. But what I've done is I've actually simplified a lot of this. If you go back and look at my first video right here, this is the one in the top left. Well, it says get 100 subs in a week, and what nobody tells you about is to get people in, but it's about 30 to 40 minutes of talking about the importance of a vision, goals and objectives, and getting you started, getting you up to the point where you're going to quite easily get that 100 subs. And then there's this one here, 1,000 subscribers and monetize fast. And I basically got monetized within 2.5 months. And I blew past 1,000 subscribers pretty quickly. Again, 2.5 months is pretty quick. So I give you more of an update on what I did in the first video, what worked, what didn't work. And then at 5,000 subscribers, I put out this video here. So it's the bottom one. And that's on how I did this in 6 months, getting 12,000 views a day, 5,000 subs, and about $1,000 US a month, and over 40,000 hours. And I think right up now I've got over 1.5 million views. And I can't remember some of the other stats, but really I'd say the business side of things, having a vision, the goals, objectives, all that stuff is far more important than getting the gear, for example. If you apply all that and you've just got an iPhone, you can still produce some really, really good content. The next thing, of course, for a kit I recommend is, getting a microphone like the Tascam. If that's a little too expensive, then consider the Synco Lav S6E. It's only, what, $20? $19.99 or something like that. And it's going to give you much better audio than the in-camera microphone. And you get those two things taken care of, you're off to the races. Now, what you can do if you're inside and you don't have the money for lights, because I think I spent about $1,400 on lighting rigs, stands, and all that stuff, is if you've got a window that gives you a pretty steady light, and then get one of those screens that reduces the sharpness of that light, and angle yourself so part of your face is lit well and the outside's a little bit darker, that's going to produce some good results too. But you really got to focus on the vision, mission, goals, and objectives, all that stuff. And if you watch those 3 videos, I think that'll help you a lot. Plus, in a lot of my videos, I do a behind the scenes, and I talk about technology that I'm using or issues that I'm having to help you out as well. So be sure to watch the entire video, because that stuff's usually right at the end. Shrijan asks, R5 has 8K 30, so technically it can shoot at 1080 at 240 or 480 frames per second. Can we unlock that feature with Magic Lantern? No, not right now. The R5 has just come out, and Magic Lantern, I believe, is just getting started with it. So I wouldn't rush to that right now. Now keep in mind, you can probably even do 1080 frames per second in 1080. You're going at a certain level, your level of quality is going to drop off. So even while you can produce higher frame rates, and there are cameras that do that, your quality is going to drop off. So I don't think you'd want to push much more than 240 frames per second. But yeah, the R5 is definitely capable of doing that. It's just a matter of following up with the Magic Lantern project, talking to them, telling them what you would like, and taking it from there. Frosty asks, do you think that Canon should offer a new battery grip with a gig internet, 5G, the weather channel, and temperature forecast so you can plan 8K shooting? Well, they already have it, and it's right here. It's called a smartphone. So you can get a lot of that stuff on your smartphone, which I keep with me all the time. Battery grips, you know what, Frosty, I'd like to get a battery grip, but I haven't really had the need for that yet. The R5 with new batteries, I find it gives me all the time I need to shoot. It's more than enough for shooting an hour Q&A video like this. And if I'm out in the field, I'll bring along a battery or two with me, but I'm not really too worried about a battery grip yet. But as I do more traveling, then yeah, a battery grip will come more in handy. Thanks, good question. John asks, Casey on Camera Conspiracies has been complaining about how difficult it is to edit EOS R5 files. I know he uses DaVinci Resolve, and you have an iMac Pro. Have you had any problems with the R5 files? I don't remember you saying so. No, I haven't had any problems, but let me quantify, because my scenarios are probably different from his. Pretty well every video I shoot is in 4K HQ, so it's 8K downsample. The camera's doing all the hard work there, so I'm basically taking a 4K file back into my computer. I'm shooting right now in C-Log, at least I hope I am. I remember setting it, but sometimes my memory's not the greatest. Now when I take it back into my computer, 1080 on the iMac Pro base unit, buttery smooth, super fast. But on the 4K stuff, depending on what I have going on in the background, because I don't render, sometimes it's buttery smooth, other times it will skip a frame, and that seems to happen more often than not. But the audio is synced perfectly. So what I generally do when I'm previewing these videos is I don't play them at normal speed, I play them at 2x speed. So that way I can get through the process a lot quicker. I have to listen a bit more carefully, but the video dropping frames really doesn't have any impact on my workflow. If it did, I would just use proxy files, and the industry's been using proxy files for a long time, so I'm complaining about the R5 files. Well, you know, don't blame a duck for quacking. You've got high detail 4K video. This is at, what, 470 megabits per second? So these are going to be big files, and it's a high bandwidth. If you're going to be going to 4K, if your computer can't handle 4K, then your computer can't handle 4K. You're going to need to use proxies, but still your export times are going to be right up there. I knew last year when I bought my iMac Pro that I was going to be doing 4K video for my own personal use. And so that's why I bought a machine that could handle it. Now, again, I did a test when I shot 8K files, brought them into my computer. If you want to have any chance of working with 8K files, then what you need to do is you either need to use proxies or you need to render the files before you can start editing them. And if you render them, they're perfectly fine, of course, until you make your first edit. Then it's got to re-render that whole clip again. So for 8K, you're definitely want to try that again. For 8K, you're definitely going to want to use proxy files. But you know, as long as your computer's relatively new, got a decent GPU that offers H.265 decoding or encoding, sorry, you really shouldn't have a problem. But if it's an older computer and it's good enough at 1080 and just barely does that, you're probably going to need to upgrade, because it's 4K here. Keep in mind that the 4K HQ files don't have any more, they aren't any bigger than 4K files, they just have more detail, right? So the standard 4K is a little bit soft, but the 4K HQ's got more detail, because for every 1 pixel, when you downsample, you've got 4 pixels to replace it. Paul says, I saw another channel compare the Fuji GFX 100 camera against the iPhone 11, and the iPhone's pictures were sharper. If both are at the max resolution, is this possible? I'm beginning to wonder about these comparisons, including video to against the iPhone. Could you make a video on this topic to provide guidance where each makes sense? If you've been a photographer or videographer a long time, you've heard this expression. The best camera in the world, and I've got the scoop on Casey here. I know I can identify the best camera in the world. You ready for this? Looking right into the camera for dramatic effect. It's the camera you have with you. And today with smartphones like this one here, now this is an iPhone 7, well, here, I was holding it off frame. If you don't have your SLR with you, well, that's going to be what's going to allow you to capture the moment. Okay, so iPhones do produce good results, but here's something you got to understand. There's certain, and I'm going to get into math, so apologies here, I'm getting into some math. When you look at the, it's on the back here. When you look at the lens here, you see how shallow that is. So even though Apple might say, well, it's a 0.9 f value, it isn't, because the crop factor is something crazy like 8. So 0.9 times 8, and guess what? You're probably pretty close to around 8 at the very minimum. So for a lens like this, there's no way on earth that the iPhone 11 is going to produce anything near like this, the depth of field, or even on this lens here. Now, with the iPhones 11, I don't know, can't remember if it's the earlier ones or not, you can create that blurred background. And it looks pretty good, but if you don't even have to pixel peek. If you look at the boundaries between subjects you'll see that it's not as clean, or if you look at the hair, it doesn't look as clean. Whereas with a lens like this 50mm, by changing the f-stop, I can just subtly change and separate the subject from the background. And there's no way an iPhone, with today's current technology, or probably even 3 or 4 years from now, that's going to do the same thing. You can't change the laws of physics. It's like the telescopes where we look up at the stars and the moon. You can't do that with an iPhone, no matter how much computational power you have. At a certain point, you need a certain diameter lens, you need a certain focal length, you need certain characteristics. But that being said, if you're shooting photos and video and it's in midday, the iPhone's going to produce some pretty impressive stuff. It really is, and I've actually used it in some of my videos and nobody could tell the difference. But as we start to get down into lower light situations, it's going to struggle, it's not going to produce as well, and there's no way an iPhone 11 is going to do nearly as well as an R5 for photography or stills. It's just the physics behind it. It doesn't mean you can't produce really good results, and it all goes back to that, what's the best camera you have? It's the one that you have with you. So I know that there's some videos that'll say, well, you know, it produces just as good results. It doesn't, but it might seem like that. Keep in mind, anything you're watching on your screen is at a maximum resolutions of 8 megapixels. 4K is around 8 megapixels. 2K, well, it's about a fourth of that. So you're not going to be able to really see that detail unless you punch in, whereas stills at a 45 megapixel, if I want to crop in and still print out an 8.5 by 11, I'm going to be able to do that. You compare printouts from an 8.5 by 11, from an iPhone 11 and an R5, for example, you're going to notice a huge difference. So it depends on your scenario. I've also taken stills from my 4K HQ video, and you know what? They've been good enough for Facebook, for sending to my wife through iMessage or anybody else, or even for putting on Facebook or making thumbnails. So even the iPhone, you don't even have to take stills now. You can take your stills out of the video for a lot of situations. So I understand where you're coming from, but I think the biggest part is understanding the scenario and what capabilities you're trying to get out of the camera. Dolwolfian asks, I'm seriously thinking of buying the Canon 5D SR with the Trinity EF lens as mainly a landscape photographer. Would you call me crazy to buy such an old camera? No, I'd call anybody crazy who called you crazy for buying such an old camera. As I've always said, whatever you're looking at buying, come out with your own capabilities first. Make sure you understand what it is. The village mayor was on the fence. He was thinking of trading up to the R5, keeping the R6, R5, and going back and forth. And I said, well, look, you know, my advice is very simply this. Write down on a piece of paper what capabilities you exactly need as a photographer, and then compare both cameras side by side and see which one you prefer. And at the end of the day, he decided to stick with his R6. And that's what I'd say. And if your capabilities are more than met by a 4-year-older camera, then by all means get it, and you're also going to get a better deal out of it. I think that's a smart way of going. Oh, and one thing, guys, before I started reading this question, I stopped recording because I'd hit 25 minutes and I didn't want to, you know, accidentally start talking and then have it cut off, because it'll just shut off at 30 minutes. When I went to restart it, it said it couldn't because the camera's too hot internally. So I thought, yeah, okay, that's not going to stop me. So I went to the back of the camera and I'm still recording in C-Log, but I'm now recording in 4K 30 with high quality mode disabled. So I'm not recording in 4K HQ or 4K Fine. I'm recording in 4K 30. So you can compare the difference in quality between 4K HQ and 4K 30. And I'm going to record 4K 30 for the rest of this video because I don't have to worry about overheating and battery life. Let's take a look at that. We got at least 75%, so we're good there. So yeah, 25 minutes and I got about 75, well, 3 bars left. It's probably around 75%. So just me trying to be transparent with you guys. All right, let's get to the next question. Srijong asks, the Sony a7C has gyro data in it. What's your view on it? It's phenomenal. It's terrific. I think it's so good. I'd like to see it in my Canon R5, but you know, I get the A7S III. I'm going to be able to try it out myself, but I think it's fabulous. I'm not saying that the R5 is terrible. The IBIS in the R5 is good enough for me, but you know, to get that silky smooth IBIS or silky smooth, that Sony data, the gyro data is just phenomenal. I'm just amazed at how good it is. David asks, what computer specs or software do you find best to edit the R5 video? I also watch Camera Conspiracies and he seems to have issues with editing in 1080p. Now I have an iMac Pro. It's the base unit. I think they're around, was it $4,000 or $5,000 new? I don't know Windows very well, but you know, if you look at the iMac Pro or one of their MacBook Pros, the 2019 models, like a base unit there, probably with 1 terabyte SSD, those would be more than fast enough to handle 4K HQ. Now if he's having trouble with 1080p, then I think he's got some computer issues, because 1080p for me is silky smooth. I've never had problems with 1080. Even when I had an old 2015 MacBook Pro, I could just handle 1080p like it was nothing. It was very, very smooth, never dropped a frame, no matter how many effects I had. And as I said, if you've just used the timeline below to jump to this video, you want to take a look at this question. You want to go back to some of the earlier questions where I talked about what it's like recording 4K HQ on my iMac. 4K does take a lot more resources than 1080. So if you have a computer that can just handle 1080, and you're going to go up to 4K you're going to have some problems, most likely. But you can use proxies to get around that, but still your export times are going to increase. And what I find is really important, a lot of cameras that do 4K, they give you the option of H.265, and that is going to need some video encoding, hardware encoding, because if the GPU doesn't support that, give you an idea, my 2015 MacBook Pro, I was able to export an hour film, and it would take about 54 minutes. Then I did the same video in H.265. It took about 22 hours. That's huge. Now the 2016 MacBook Pro, otherwise similarly spec'd, it was able to do H.264 in 54 minutes, but then when I did H.265, it was 54 minutes. So a huge difference in performance. So I would say that if you're on a Windows machine or a Linux machine, you really want to get a good GPU. That's really where it's going to make a difference. But on a Mac, if you're buying a Mac, then you know, one of those iMacs with a really good GPU in it, or an iMac Pro works really, really well, or I consider even a MacBook Pro 2019 model. I think they're just fantastic. And as far as a Mac Pro, no, I wouldn't touch those. They're way overpriced for what they are. You could build a Unix box with DaVinci. Now, in terms of software, I use Final Cut Pro, and that might give me a bit of an edge because Apple's able to control the entire stack. So they produce the software, and they produce the hardware, and they control everything in between. Sorry, I'm a little distracted. I got a squirrel here doing acrobatics in the background and no camera to shine on him. I know, I talk about squirrels a lot. So if you have any more questions about that, follow up with a comment down below and I will get back to you. Andres asks, I know there might be too many questions, but the question I keep asking regarding auto exposure and meeting modes during video recording are quite significant, I would think. Could you please quickly test that next week? Yes, I've actually been testing it since I've had the R5, and what I've found to eliminate some of the issues, I make sure the camera's in the shade and that I'm in the shade and the background isn't too brightly lit. That helps me out a lot. Shooting C-Log does help too, but there is one setting I noticed in the video section, the third chapter or the third tab, and that's highlight tone priority. And by turning that on, one thing I was able to test last week is that the highlights looked a whole lot better. They weren't clipped. And that's certainly something worth testing. And I didn't really notice any other effects of it. I'm going to be doing a full video on the R5 metering, but I've got a lot more testing to do, and it takes a lot of video to do this. I don't want to just slap something together, but I would agree with Casey. There are some issues with the metering with the R5, and I've struggled a bit with it. I've lost a lot of hours of video because I've had to reshoot, reposition. But try that highlight tone priority and see if it does make a difference for you. But if, like I was right over here shooting this way earlier, and you've got my head, which is taking up probably about 25% of the frame, and it wasn't direct sunlight, but I was getting the sky and the trees, and I was completely underexposed. And I wish there was a way to tell the camera, it's like, you know what, focus on me first, expose for me, and then worry about the background because, well, the subject matters more than anything else, right? Pat asks, could you please talk about how you set your white balance? Thank you. Well, Pat, there's two ways that I do it. So for outside, for example, I will use these things here. And generally the best way to actually white balance is using a gray. I'm not too happy with this one here, and I'll explain that in a minute. If I'm shooting inside, I use this right white card that I got from Gregg. It's $8 for shipping. They're free, but he charges shipping. And I love this because when inside, what I do is I'll hold it up to my face like this, bring my hand over, and what that does is it creates a grayscale on here. And then what I'll do is I'll just keep, with the eyedropper, I'll keep tapping on it until I get the look that I prefer. And it works really, really well. Whereas I find that this thing here, the three color chit, it doesn't work nearly as well. I'm not as happy with it. But outside, if I'm shooting a lot of run and gun, you'd be surprised at what you can white balance in your frame. If there's pavement, for example, sidewalks, concrete sidewalks are perfect for doing white balance. Maybe you're shooting the forest and maybe you've just got some trees in the background. You can white balance against them depending on the color of the bar. But what I do inside, because my studio and the lighting never changes, I did the white balance once, and then I saved everything as a preset. So now I don't even bother white balancing when I do my in-studio work. I just apply the preset and everything's fine unless I change the white balance. All right, guys, I gotta apologize again. It was very quiet when I was out here before. We have some radial saws in the background, but the Tascam does a pretty good job. But my neighbors right behind me here, they love to shout even when they're talking, and hopefully they're not gonna be outside for very long. And I do apologize for any of that, but I've already started, I can't stop. Popcorn asks, how's your health, Simon? Well, thank you very much, Popcorn, for asking. Now, you may not be aware, but I had surgery about a month and a half ago to have my appendix removed. And I believe I'm all healed now. Everything feels good. I'm doing my regular workout. I'm getting back in shape. I'm doing rehab. And I do feel a lot better. But you know what? I actually feel a lot better. Prior to the surgery, I had so many digestive problems that were quite similar to irritable bowel syndrome. And since the surgery, that's almost completely gone away. So I'm slowly bringing in foods that I couldn't eat before. But my movements and everything is so much better. So thanks for asking. My health is actually very good and even better than it was before the surgery. Clive asks, hey Simon, which are the 3 most important camera lenses for videographers? Oh, that's a tough one. Okay, well, I'm going to tell you what are the lenses that I think are best for me, because a lot of this is scenario based. So the 50mm, the EF 50mm f1.2 is terrific. It produces really good video, as you can see here. I just absolutely love it. It's so wide at 1.2, but it also doubles as a great stills lens as well, so I can produce incredible portraits. So I just absolutely love this lens. It's a dual purpose lens. Now the 24-105, I love it too because it allows me to go as wide as 24mm. I can also do 50mm, I can go up to 105, I can do 80, 85. It's a very versatile lens, and because it's the f4, it's f4 consistent throughout the focal range. It's a great travel lens. I really love it. It's not as wide, but if I'm doing a lot of travel or run and gun, then it's usually more than enough for me, and it's a terrific lens. And again, it's one of those lenses that does double duty as both a stills lens and a videography lens, and I really, really love that. But let's talk a little bit about scenarios. I just got back into doing some astrophotography earlier, and the 800mm, yep, that f11 with the extender, I haven't tried it with the extender yet, you can produce incredible results with it. I got incredible results of the moon and the moons of Jupiter along with Jupiter with just 800mm, and I was really, really happy with that. And it also took some great pictures as well. So if you're doing wildlife and you don't want to have to spend a ton of money, that's really great. Now, if you're a professional and you want to spend the extra money, then get the 100-500 or the EF 100-400. And again, if you're into video, it depends on your scenarios. If you're shooting studio work, well then maybe like even the 24mm pancake, the EF lens can work well. If you want some better optics, go with the 15-35. That works really well for studio as well. I think it's an f2.8. And I'd even say that like the 28-70 is a terrific lens too. Again, it doubles for stills and photography. It goes back to what I've been saying all along in a lot of my videos. Understand what capabilities you want, and then get the focal length to match that up. And maybe even some cinema lenses might be what you're looking for. It really depends on what you're trying to do, and you really haven't given me much information there, so I chose to answer the question based on what most ordinary filmmakers are looking for and what kind of work you want to do. And it's really great when you can buy a lens like the 50mm that doubles as a video workhorse and a photo workhorse as well. And is there any other lens that I've looked at too? Yeah, the 7200 f2.8. For some of these, the wider you can get, the better the results you can get, the more of a bokeh, the depth of field, just awesomeness. They're going to produce better results, but $200 24mm pancake lenses can still do a great job, as can the 50mm f1.8, the nifty 50. Stop the FOMO asks, what's a good tripod that you've used for under $1,000? I find cheaper Amazon 200 ones unreliable and unsecured. Well, FOMO, I want to show you this slide here. So if we take a look here, these are some of the tripod capabilities that I look for. One is weight, and this can work both for and against you. Sometimes you want a light one, and other times, well, you can't get a light one because your other capabilities will overrule that. Levels, I think levels is really terrific. It's the ability to put your tripod on any ground and then adjust the legs so that it levels, or adjust the head. Either way, you want to level somewhere so you can level it out. So that way, when you're shooting video, you want the horizon to be perfect. Photos, you can always crop it later, but for video, that's very, very important. Also, you want the ability to have fine movement control. So when you tighten things up and you just want to adjust it lightly, that's very important. And where that really comes in, for example, when I was shooting the moon, having the ability to lightly adjust how the camera's tilting up, down, or across the entire axis, X, Y, and Z, is very, very important. So that you're only going to get more expensive tripods. Other things that are important, you want some sort of horizontal column. So that middle column in the middle, some cameras, they allow it to go all the way up, and then you can rotate it down so you can have it come out horizontally, and that's very advantageous as well. Other capabilities include the ability to add weight. So if you're doing moon shots and you're on like with an 800mm with a 2x extender, any movement is going to create unwanted effects. So if you've got a center weight that you can put on it so to kind of keep it in place and weigh it down a bit, that can really, really help with stability. But construction and durability as well. And I'm going to tell you some of the tripods I'm using, and you're going to be absolutely surprised. One I have right now is I'm using the Amazon Basics. Yeah, that $25 one. One of the reasons I bought it, it was cheap. I want to review it for the ordinary filmmaker. And you know what? I didn't really care if I banged it around or anything and take it outside. No big deal. I leave it out at night. I don't care. Downstairs, I'm using a different lens. This is the one, or not lens, this is the tripod that I'm using downstairs. It's the Sherpa 200R tripod. Not cheap. It's $122. And it never moves. This is the one I do my studio work with. But, you know, as you say, how secured is this? Well, things can move a little bit. It's not the best, but you know, I just check it every time before I shoot, and I'm fine with it. So what would I recommend? Well, for under $1,000, and it's just under $1,000 when you take a look at the head. Let's take a look at this one here. The Manfrotto 475B is $450, and it is strong, it is durable, it's got the clips, it's got that center column. It is just a really, really good tripod that I recommend, but you're going to have to get the head, and this is the head that you want. You want the Manfrotto 502AH video head with a flat base, and once you throw these two together, you're going to have a pretty good system. So it's $450 for the tripod, and then you're essentially adding about $200 on that, so $450, $650, $625, or about $625. So it's considerably under $1,000, and this is a pretty heavy duty unit that I think you're going to be happy with for video in most occasions. And I think I would like to have this one too. But, you know, and this is the thing of starting out a channel. Look, I've got the R5, and you're going, what, Simon, you're using Amazon Basics? You're using a $100 tripod? There's only so much I can afford to upgrade. This is a very, very expensive hobby. And I'm just slowly updating things as I can. And right now, I'm really trying to focus on the things that you guys see, such as the lenses and the cameras, the settings, the reviews, and if my tripod's good enough to get the results, I'll put the money to the other stuff. Christopher asks for my thoughts on the Canon EOS R5 versus the A7 III. Well, both are very good cameras. They're both, I would say, they're stills hybrid cameras, but they're separated by about 3 years. So while they both can do video very well, the R5 is brand new, it's just come out, and in 3 years, a lot's happened in technology. I would like to know why you're comparing these two cameras, because the real comparison would be the R5 against the A7 IV when that comes out, because the A7 IV is going to advance as well. So with the R5, if you're, well, let me forget the R5. If you're into video, the R5 is going to be much better. 4K HQ produces really incredible results, although I'm not using that mode right now. I'm just using the standard 4K 30 on the R5. It's got a few more modes, 4K 120, it's got 8K, which you can use a little bit as well, but the 4K HQ mode is just incredible. It's really, really good, and the IBIS on it, I'd say, is better than the A7 III. Some people disagree with me on that, but if you're doing stills, well, again, this falls back to what capabilities you want. I think both cameras do great for stills. I'd say that the 5D Mark IV does great for stills too. We can go back further in time. So I'd like to know, Christopher, a little bit more about why you're comparing these two cameras. What's your use case? Are you photo or are you video? And if you can let me know a bit more information, I can tell you what I think is best for you, but I think they're both solid cameras. You're talking about two of the best camera manufacturers in the world right now, Canon and Sony, and the numbers back that up. Canon's around 45% worldwide sales for both mirrorless and, or talk about interchangeable lens cameras, and Sony's in second place, I believe, or they're kind of neck and neck with Nikon right now. Jackson Law asks, since there are rumors of a new Canon video camera, the R5H, do you think Canon will follow Sony's way of category camera based on video first, photo first, or both? I really don't know what Canon's up to, but I actually kind of prefer the way Panasonic does it. When they came out with the S1, they came out with when they came out with the S series, they came out with the S1, which was still a stills hybrid camera, but it was more focused towards video. And then they came out with the S1R, which was a high megapixel camera. It was focused more on photos. It did have some video, but it wasn't video capable as much as the S1. Then about 6 months later, they came out with the S1H, which is a video hybrid camera, and it's all about video first. And I think that's just a beautiful line up there. You know, have yourself a photocentric camera, a video-centric camera, and something that's kind of right in the middle for somebody that needs both. Because if you look at wedding photographers, they're a perfect example of somebody that needs both these days. Amitai asks, is there more information about the new Canon M50? Sadly, no. I don't have anything. I wish I did. As soon as I do, you'll know I'll update it in a video. And our last question is from Jukpa. Any rumors on RF lenses, especially ultra-wide angle? You asked for it, so here we go. Look at this slide here. You can see that these are all the lenses that we've heard about in the last year and a half, RF lenses that are rumored. It's either a rumor or a patent filing, and I've highlighted the three that are on the wide side. So we've got the 17 to 70 f3.5 to 5.6. Then we have the 35mm f1.2, and of course the 14 to 28 f2, which is part of the Holy Trinity, the 14 to 28, the 28 to 70, and then the 70 to 135, which hasn't come out yet. So that's all we have right now. Now, if I've left something off the list, anyone, let me know and I'll update this list, but that's what we have for now. So guys, here we are. We're at the end of another week of question and answers, and I think this one's gone. I've shot for just under 50 minutes at this point. The first half of the video was in 4K HQ, and the latter half was in 4K because it overheated, because the temperatures are much hotter. So we're having a bit of a warm spell right now. It's in the upper 70s. It's great for sleeping at night, but it's not very good for the R5. So I am on firmware 1.1, and what I have noticed with the firmware in the R5 is that when the temperature drops below 70, especially as we start to get down to 66 degrees Fahrenheit or less, 66 Celsius would be not good. And Celsius, that's somewhere in the upper teens. And the R5 basically records unlimited. Like you're looking at almost unlimited 4K 120, 4K HQ. I haven't tested 8K, but I expect the same. And if you've got a slight breeze at those temperatures, I recorded 2 hours of 4K HQ, but sadly, that's not where I'm at right now. All right, now I want to provide a bit more of a discussion about behind the scenes. In my video I put out, I think it was on Thursday morning, I said how I had dropped my Canon R5, and what saved my camera, first of all, it was only about, it was about a foot. I had the video mic, the Rode Video Mic Pro on top, so it actually fell down onto that, and that got some scratches on it. And of course the lens, I had this guy on it here, the 24 to 105 lens, the RF version. And when it fell, this part hit. Just like that. It's got that weight behind it. And what happened here is this is an ND filter, a variable ND filter. It's got two rings, and the inner ring got deformed, and the outer ring got deformed a little bit. I could still move it, but there was enough resistance that it would actually unscrew it. So I was quite concerned. As you can see, I produced several videos with the R5. So I don't have any problems with the camera. There are no scratches on the camera anywhere whatsoever. And I've shot a little bit with the 24-105. I actually this is a new one. I just got this from Downtown Camera. Patrick sent this one up to me. I had to pay for it. It wasn't free. So it was a $200 mistake. But thankfully, the camera's fine. The lens is fine. And that's why I swear by these ND filters. And if you're not going to use a variable ND filter, then at the very least, and I've got one on here, you want to use a UV0 because it will save your life. Because if the thing hits down, the first thing that hits that pavement, that concrete, or that doorway that you walk into is going to be that filter. And they not only protect the lens, but they protect them against scrapes and bruises. And I just saved myself a lot of money by getting that. So yeah, it cost me $200, but it's better than a repair. And it kind of goes back to the R5 is built tough. I hope I don't have any more of those in the near future. I'm also getting a lot of gear, so I want to talk to you a little bit about gear that I'm getting. I'm probably expecting about 3 or 4 shipments over the next week. I am going to be testing out, well, this is Sunday morning now. I probably tested Friday night a new live streaming. I don't know, I'm going to definitely try it out this weekend, live streaming with a new video capture device. I don't want to mention the name yet because I'm still playing around with it. But I've got that cable for the R5, that micro HDMI, I really hate that. So I've got that. I've got the 70D. I'm going to hook up both cameras. I'm going to try it out, and I'm going to use Ecamm to be able to test this out, see how well it works, and give you guys another option for live streaming. I have no interest in doing live streaming every week. I think this format is really good. Live streaming, it does have its places though. New Year's, Christmas Eve, times of year like that where everyone sort of seems to be on vacation. You know, I can do long long episodes, I guess we'll call them, where I can welcome in the new year through several different time zones. And I think that's a lot of fun to do. But there's that. I'm getting new microphones. I'm getting new monitors. I might even be getting a few new camera bodies too, and some lenses. So we're going to start to see a bit more in terms of gear review. But my channel, the priorities are still on news and rumors. Those are the first and foremost that what comes out, and then reviews after that. And a news and rumor item can bump that. Oh, what else am I getting? Oh, so I'm working on trying to get a C70 in here. Yeah, cinema camera. No, I don't know how to use one. But yeah, I'm looking to see if I can get it for at least, at the very least on a loaner. I think purchasing it right now might be a little tough, but I'm going to see what I can do about getting a C70 in here to try one of those out in the studio. That should be quite interesting. But I don't really have any more questions. One thing I want to sort of give back to you guys is, first of all, thanks for your engagement, not only in giving me a thumbs up, liking the channel, but commenting, responding to other people's comments. It means a lot to me. That I'm building a community and you guys actually enjoy coming to me for some of your news and for your entertainment. I don't really see myself pivoting off my vision. I'm going to keep my vision the way it is, but I could pivot and I could at some point decide, well, I'm going to move more into gear review. I don't really know. I have to wait to see how opportunities present themselves. And when an opportunity presents itself, I'll evaluate that opportunity and see how that might change things. For example, how could getting a C70 impact and change the channel? I don't really know. I'm still relatively new. This channel isn't even a year old yet. I started the end of, let's say November the 1st. So, October 7th. Yeah, it's about 11 months. That might be a little bit of an awkward jump cut. And the reason is, I just hit that 30 minutes. Even though I have Camera Connect down here and I do generally look at it, I looked at it at 21 minutes. I forgot to look at it again. And the camera shut off, and because it's a mirrorless camera, you can't tell, you can't hear audibly when it stops recording. It's such a great camera, but having these stupid, sorry, I shouldn't use the word stupid, asinine recording limits, they serve no purpose. The reason they would put on there doesn't exist anymore. There is no more tax on it in Europe. They should just remove it in a firmware. It's just absolutely ridiculous. It just gets in the way, and once again, it's kind of ruined my train of thought. I forgot about some of the things I wanted to say. It's very, very frustrating. So hopefully Canon does eventually remove those 30-minute record limits. There's absolutely no need for them. But when I went to start it up again, I made sure I put it back to f1.8. that I'm not recording in 4K fine. And when I brought it back online, because I use a custom mode to store the information, it's saying, Simon, you have 0 minutes of being able to record because the camera's too hot. That's because when I first started up, it defaults to 4K fine or 4K HQ. So once again, I'm recording in 4K 30 and there's no time limit. In fact, I've still got a half a battery left that I can keep on going. But I'm going to sum things up pretty quickly here and let's close off this video. But a big thanks to you guys. Look, I really do appreciate you taking the time out to watch my video, to actually comment, to like my videos, or even dislike it if you're not happy with it. The feedback you give me helps make this a community. Almost every video now gets at least 100 views. Sorry, not 100 views. That wouldn't be very good. Gets 100 comments. And I'm amazed to see how many conversations go on without me being there, that you guys are interacting with each other. You're helping others with problems. And I think that's terrific. I don't mind tough questions. I don't mind tough observations of videos or when you guys are tough on me. It's not that I have thick skin, but I look at the message that's being sent. And that's always important to me. Now, one thing I will give you a bit of feedback on, though, if you do put a link in any comments or if there's any swearing that's used, the YouTube filtering system will automatically capture those and hold them for me to review. And in the last couple of weeks or so, I'm just not even getting there to review it. I went in last night to look at a few, and I just don't have the time. So it's better actually not to put a link in your comment and actually talk to it or tell people where to go. It's not that I have a problem with links. It's that, sadly, quite often links can send people to hazardous places, or it can be unsafe material. So I've just decided to block links altogether. And I used to use links quite a bit. Because I used to actually review some of the comments that got trapped in the link purgatory, and I would release them, but because now I don't have the time to review those, you guys are giving me so many comments now, I can barely keep up with the latest videos that I release. And what I try to do is I try to spend at least an hour or two after a video's come out to comment on them. Now, if it's during the week because I have work, what I'll do is when I wake up in the morning, I'll comment on a few, then my first break and lunch, and I'll try to comment on them throughout the day, but not during my work time. But yeah, thanks so much. I really do appreciate the support. And like I said, last week I did a review with the village mayor, who's one of my viewers, and it was a lot of fun. Now we were cautious, following public safety. We were wearing our masks and gloves, and because well, I won't get into the details of our families, but we've got older members with us, and the last thing we want to do is bring something home that could prematurely have them leave us. So while I am doing these reviews, I'm being careful, and as the situation changes and we finally lick COVID-19, I would love to collaborate with more of you guys. So if you've got your own channel, or if you'd like to be part of mine and you got an idea, I'd be more than happy to explore that with you. But that's it for now. Last thing I want to say is don't forget to subscribe. At 20,000 subscribers, I'm giving away 2 microphones, the Synco Lav S6E and the shotgun mic Synco M3. Both of them are going to one person, one lucky winner, once I reach 20,000 subscribers. And of course, once I reach 100,000 subscribers, I'm giving away a brand new Canon R5 mirrorless camera. But as I get every 10,000 subscribers past that, 30, 40, 50, I'm also going to be announcing another prize, and that prize is going to get a little bit better each time, up to 100,000. But thanks for watching The Ordinary Filmmaker. We'll see you again soon.